He left the safe open to test his black maid, risking everything in a moment of suspicion. Her next move would challenge his deepest assumptions about trust and human nature. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. John Smith's estate stood like a sentinel against the Montana wilderness, a sprawling mansion where wealth wasn't just displayed but fortified. The three-story structure of limestone and glass commanded views of rolling hills and distant mountains, its manicured grounds meticulously maintained to match the precision inside. Every painting hung at exactly the right angle, every surface gleamed with polish, and every secret remained locked away until today. On this ordinary Monday morning, John deliberately left his private safe conspicuously unlatched. The heavy vault door in his study stood slightly ajar, a silent trap set for the person he trusted least, his housekeeper, Anna Oliveira. He had hired her 23 days ago, and despite her impeccable references, suspicion had been his constant companion. "Let's see what you're really made of," he muttered to himself as he retreated to the surveillance room, eyes fixed on the monitors that captured every corner of his fortress. Anna moved through the mansion with quiet efficiency, her uniform pressed and her movements economical. The 32-year-old had learned long ago that invisibility was sometimes the safest choice in homes like this. She dusted the crystal decanters in the drawing room, straightened the imported rugs, and made her way toward the west wing where the study waited. The morning light streamed through tall windows as she entered, casting golden rectangles across the hardwood floor. Anna approached the oak-paneled wall beneath a massive landscape painting of Montana wilderness. As her cloth moved across the polished surface, she noticed something out of place. The vault door, usually sealed tight behind the painting, stood slightly open. Her hand froze mid-motion. The housekeeper's heart pounded against her ribs, not with temptation, but with the familiar ache of recognition. This wasn't carelessness. This was a test. Anna had faced such moments before, situations carefully engineered to see if someone like her, someone with brown skin and an accent, someone whose family struggled to keep their small grocery store afloat in New Orleans, would succumb to temptation. The open vault might as well have had a sign, "Prove what kind of person you really are." She stepped back from the safe, cloth still in hand. Through the gap she could see the edge of a red folder and what appeared to be cash, a bundle of crisp bills casually left in view. The sight made her stomach tighten. Not because she wanted what lay inside, but because of what this moment represented. Another powerful man assuming the worst of her based on nothing but prejudice. Anna turned away, pulled out her smartphone, and typed a quick message to Maria Santos, the estate manager. "Vault room door open. Please confirm." John Smith hunched forward in his dimly lit surveillance room, eyes narrowed at the monitor displaying his study. The blue glow illuminated his tense features as he watched the footage with growing satisfaction. The trap had been set, and in his mind, sprung perfect. The red folder containing fabricated financial documents and exactly $5,000 in cash, both carefully placed in plain sight inside the unlocked vault, were now missing. "Predictable," he muttered, reaching for the intercom button with practiced certainty. His finger pressed down firmly, the connection crackling to life throughout the mansion's west wing. "So you finally showed your true colors, huh?" His voice carried through the speaker, thick with accusation and a hint of triumph. "I knew someone like you couldn't resist." In the upstairs hallway, Anna Oliveira froze mid-motion, the dust cloth trembling slightly in her hand. The venom in her employer's voice stung like a physical blow. She had been meticulously cleaning the ornate picture frames that lined the corridor when his voice cut through the silence. Her heart pounded against her ribs, not from guilt but from the familiar ache of being prejudged. She glanced around, realizing the accusation was directed at her through the hidden speaker system. The housekeeper took a deep breath, steadying her nerves and straightening her posture. 23 days of employment had taught her that dignity was her only shield in this mansion. "Mr. Smith, I haven't taken anything," Anna replied, her voice clear and unwavering despite the tremor in her hands. "The door was open when I passed by. I was about to report it to Maria." In the surveillance room, John scoffed at the monitor. The wealthy estate owner had built his fortune on reading people, on anticipating betrayal before it happened. He'd seen this scenario play out before: the denial, the innocent act, the carefully constructed excuse. "Save it," he snapped into the intercom. "I have cameras everywhere. I know what I saw, but he was lying. The cameras had shown Anna pausing at the open vault, looking concerned, then continuing her work without entry. What they hadn't shown was Maria Santos, the estate manager, slipping in moments earlier when the cameras briefly switched feeds. Anna stood silently in the hallway, dust cloth clutched tightly in her hand. She knew defending herself further would only deepen his suspicion. The wealthy had their own version of truth, one that rarely made room for the dignity of those who served them. "Report to my study at 5, John commanded before cutting the connection. The intercom fell silent, leaving Anna alone with the weight of an accusation she couldn't disprove. She resumed her dusting, movements now mechanical, as she contemplated how quickly trust could be poisoned by prejudice. Ana Oliveira retreated to the laundry room after the confrontation, her hands trembling as she leaned against the industrial washing machine. The sterile scent of detergent filled her nostrils, but couldn't wash away the bitter taste of injustice. It wasn't guilt that made her heart race. It was the raw humiliation of being accused simply because of who she was and where she came from. Her smartphone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out with unsteady fingers to find a message from her mother in New Orleans. The family grocery store, the small corner establishment her parents had poured their life savings into 20 years ago, was 3 weeks away from foreclosure. The bank had sent their final notice. They needed $15,000 to keep the doors open. "We've tried everything," her mother had written. "Your brother is working double shifts, but it's not enough. I hate to ask, but is there any way you could help?" Anna stared at the screen until it went dark, then pressed her palm against her eyes to stop the tears. The cruel irony wasn't lost on her. Upstairs in that vault, John Smith kept bundles of cash that would solve her family's problems instantly. The red folder and money he'd left as bait would have been enough to save the store, a sum that was probably pocket change to a man like him. For one fleeting moment, she allowed herself to imagine taking it. The relief on her mother's face, the weight lifted from her brother's shoulder, the family legacy preserved. But the thought vanished as quickly as it had formed. Her dignity wasn't for sale, not for $15,000, not for $15 million. Her parents hadn't crossed borders and built a life from nothing, just for her to become the thief her employer already believed her to be. She typed a quick response. "I'll figure something out. Tell Miguel to rest sometimes. Love." It was a promise she had no idea how to keep, but she would find a way that didn't compromise who she was. Anna splashed cold water on her face at the utility sink, the cool liquid washing away the heat of shame and anger. She rolled down the sleeves of her uniform to hide the red marks where John had grabbed her wrist during their confrontation. The bruise would fade, but the memory of his accusation, "Someone like you," would linger much longer. She straightened her back, smoothed her hair, and checked her reflection in the small mirror above the sink. The woman who stared back was tired but unbowed. With quiet determination, Anna returned to her duties, moving through the mansion with the same meticulous care as before, refusing to let one man's suspicion diminish her worth. John Smith sat alone in his dimly lit surveillance room, fingers drumming against the polished mahogany desk as he rewound the footage for the 5th time. The digital clock on the wall showed 3 in the morning, but sleep was the furthest thing from his mind. His eyes burned from staring at the screens, searching for the evidence he was certain existed. The footage played again. Ana Oliveira appeared in the frame, moving with her characteristic efficiency through the East Wing corridor. When she reached the vault room, her steps slowed. John leaned forward, scrutinizing her every movement. She paused at the doorway, her expression shifting from concentration to visible concern as she noticed the door slightly ajar. Instead of entering, the housekeeper reached for her smartphone, typing quickly. John enhanced the image and zoomed in. The message was clear. "Vault room door open. Please confirm." The recipient's name was visible at the top of the screen. Maria Santos, the estate manager whom he'd trusted for years. "Interesting," he muttered, rubbing his chin. Anna had immediately reported the irregularity rather than taking advantage of it. John switched to another camera angle, watching as the Brazilian woman continued her duties, occasionally glancing back toward the vault with evident unease. There was no sign of the red folder or the cash bundle he'd deliberately left exposed. If she had taken anything, she'd been impossibly careful. A sliver of doubt began to work its way into his mind, unwelcome and uncomfortable. He poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon, the amber liquid catching the blue light from the monitors. The estate owner had spent a lifetime building walls between himself and others, creating systems to verify what he believed was inevitable betrayal. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford, not after what had happened with his former business partner 8 years ago. But Anna's restraint troubled him. She hadn't entered the vault, hadn't touched anything, hadn't even lingered by the open door. Her professionalism in the face of temptation contradicted everything he believed about human nature. "Everyone has a price," John whispered to the empty room, the mantra that had guided his business dealings for decades. Yet the evidence before him suggested otherwise. He switched off the main monitor and stood up, stretching his stiff back. The woman didn't act like someone with something to hide. She moved through his home with quiet dignity, her work impeccable, her manner reserved but never subservient. John drained his glass, unwilling to acknowledge the possibility that he might have misjudged her. Pride kept him silent, unwilling to question his initial suspicions. But as he finally headed to bed, the image of Anna reporting the open vault haunted him, challenging everything he thought he knew about trust. The mansion's hallways felt heavier with each passing day, as if the very air had been poisoned by suspicion. Anna Oliveira winced as she adjusted the bandage around her wrist, the skin beneath it turning a deep purple where John Smith had grabbed her during their confrontation. She had told no one about the incident, not Jerome, who had noticed her favoring her right hand, and certainly not her mother, who already carried enough worries. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows as Anna methodically dusted the library shelves. The estate seemed unnaturally quiet, with staff averting their eyes whenever she entered a room. She could feel the weight of their judgment, their silent assumptions about her character, based solely on John's obvious distrust. "Need help with that?" Jerome asked, appearing in the doorway with gardening gloves still on his hands. "I'm fine," Anna replied, reaching higher to dust a shelf, ignoring the sharp pain that shot through her wrist. The gardener lingered, concern evident in his eyes. "People are talking, you know, about you and Mr. Smith." Anna paused, her cloth suspended in mid-air. "Let them talk. I know what happened." After Jerome left, she continued her work with deliberate care, polishing each surface until it gleamed. The mansion's opulence felt like a cruel joke. All this wealth surrounding her, while her family's grocery store in New Orleans teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. One envelope from that vault could solve everything, yet the thought never crossed her mind as anything more than a bitter observation. During lunch, she sat alone in the staff kitchen, scrolling through photos of her brother smiling behind the counter of their family store. The distance between Montana and New Orleans had never felt greater. That evening, as darkness settled over the estate, Anna retreated to her modest quarters in the East Wing. She removed her uniform, carefully folded it for tomorrow, and sat at the small desk by the window. The bruise on her wrist had darkened, a physical reminder of how quickly dignity could be assaulted. She opened her leather-bound journal, a gift from her mother when she'd left for this job, and began to write by lamplight. Her pen moved steadily across the page. "My dignity is not for sale, not even for justice." The words flowed from somewhere deep within, a truth she had carried through every hardship. Anna closed the journal and pressed her palm against its warm cover. In this house of wealth and suspicion, she possessed something no accusation could tarnish. No employer could seize her own truth, untouchable and steadfast. Tomorrow would bring more silent accusations, more sideways glances, but she would face them standing tall, her integrity intact. The morning light streamed through the tall windows of the Montana estate as Anna made her way to John Smith's study. Her wrist throbbed beneath the bandage she'd carefully wrapped that morning, a physical reminder of yesterday's confrontation. 3 sharp knocks and his voice commanded her to enter. John sat behind his mahogany desk, fingers steepled beneath his chin. His eyes immediately fell to her bandaged wrist, but no flicker of remorse crossed his face. Instead, he gestured to the chair across from him with calculated indifference. "I've been reviewing the situation," he began, his voice deliberately controlled. "You were near the vault, so were others. But the money's gone. Why should I believe you?" Anna sat with her back straight, hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. The wealthy estate owner had built his fortune on suspicion and control, and she knew this conversation was another test. "Because I have nothing to hide," she replied, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "The door was open when I passed. I was about to report it to Maria." John's jaw tightened at the mention of his estate manager. He rose from his chair and paced to the window, his reflection superimposed over the Montana landscape beyond. "Convenient explanation," he muttered. "Everyone has their price, even people who pretend they don't." The housekeeper felt heat rise to her cheeks but maintained her composure. "Not everyone," she countered quietly. "Some of us value our dignity more than money." Her employer turned, studying her with narrowed eyes. "That's a luxury most can't afford." "It's not a luxury," Anna responded. "It's all some of us have." John dismissed her with a wave, turning back to the window. "You can go, for now." As Anna rose to leave, she caught his reflection in the glass. Something had shifted in his expression. Not trust, certainly not that, but perhaps the first crack in his certainty, the beginning of doubt. She paused at the doorway. "Mr. Smith, I've worked for many wealthy people. The ones who test others are usually the ones most afraid of being tested themselves." The silence that followed her words hung heavy in the air. John didn't turn, but his shoulders stiffened slightly. Anna closed the door quietly behind her, the soft click echoing through the hallway. As she returned to her duties, the unspoken tension between them seemed to follow her through the polished corridors of the mansion. Something had changed, a subtle shift in their power dynamic that neither was ready to acknowledge. The truth remained buried somewhere in the silence, waiting to be excavated. Anna's phone vibrated against her hip as she polished the marble countertop in the kitchen. She glanced around to ensure she was alone before checking the message. Her heart sank as she read her mother's desperate words from New Orleans. The family grocery store, their lifeline for 3 generations, was facing imminent foreclosure. The loan office had called again, demanding additional collateral they simply didn't have. "We need $15,000 by next Friday," her mother wrote. "I've tried everything, Anna. I don't know what else to do." Anna leaned against the counter, her legs suddenly weak. She had been sending home half her paycheck every month, sacrificing comfort to help keep the store afloat. But her savings account held only $3,000, a sum that had taken her years to accumulate, yet nowhere near enough to save her family's legacy. The irony wasn't lost on her. Just 2 floors above, John Smith's vault contained more cash than her family had seen in their lifetime. Money that sat unused while her brother worked 18-hour days trying to keep customers coming through the door. Money that could solve everything with a single handful. Anna closed her eyes, the temptation washing over her like a physical ache. The vault door had been left open, practically an invitation. Was this another test? Or perhaps fate offering a solution to her family's desperate situation? She shook her head, banishing the thought. Her dignity wasn't for sale, not even to save what she loved most. Anna Oliver had watched her mother clean other people's homes with her head held high, never taking so much as a forgotten penny. That inheritance of integrity meant more than any store. The weight of injustice pressed down on her shoulders. It wasn't just John's baseless accusation that burned. It was the assumption behind it. The unspoken belief that someone like her with brown skin and an accent couldn't possibly resist temptation. That honesty was a luxury reserved for those who already had everything. Anna straightened her uniform and typed a quick reply to her mother. "I'll figure something out. Don't worry." She didn't know how she would help, but she knew it wouldn't be by becoming the thief John Smith already believed her to be. As she resumed her work, Anna's movements were precise and controlled, masking the storm of emotions beneath. The mansion's opulence, the crystal vases she dusted, the silver she polished, now seemed to mock her family's struggle. Yet with each careful motion, she silently reaffirmed her choice. Her worth would never be measured by what she took, but by what she refused to take, even when no one was watching. Anna's knees ached as she scrubbed the immaculate marble floors of the West Wing. Despite the pain, her movements remained methodical and thorough. The mansion's opulence seemed to mock her situation, gleaming surfaces that reflected her own diminished status back at her. The click of heels against marble announced Maria Santos's approach before Anna even looked up. The estate manager stood over her, arms crossed, watching Anna's work with calculated scrutiny. "You know," Maria began, her voice carrying the practiced authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed, "Mr. Smith has fired people for much less than what you're accused of." Anna continued scrubbing, refusing to show weakness. The brush moved in perfect circles across the floor. "He doesn't need actual proof," Maria continued, her tone sharpening. "Just a hunch is enough for him. I've seen it happen many times." Finally, Anna paused her work, sitting back on her heels. She looked directly at Maria, her expression calm despite the turmoil inside. "I didn't do anything," she stated simply, her voice steady. Maria's perfectly manicured hand waved dismissively in the air. "He doesn't care about that." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Truth doesn't matter in this house. Power does." The manager straightened her blazer and walked away, heels echoing down the corridor. The warning hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Anna resumed her scrubbing, pressing harder against the already spotless floor. When her shift timer beeped, Anna gathered her cleaning supplies and stored them carefully in the utility closet. Her wrist throbbed beneath the bandage, a physical reminder of John's accusation. She signed out on the staff log and stepped through the service door onto the back porch. The Montana sunset stretched across the sky in a spectacular display of orange and lavender. Mountains stood silhouetted against the fading light, majestic and indifferent to human struggles. On any other evening, the view might have brought Anna peace. She sank onto the wooden bench, finally allowing her shoulders to slump. The estate sprawled before her, acres of manicured grounds that Jerome tended with quiet pride. In the distance, the gardener was collecting his tools, his silhouette a familiar comfort in this hostile environment. Anna pulled out her phone, checking for messages from her family. Nothing new. The grocery store's financial troubles weighed on her mind, a constant pressure that made her current situation even more unbearable. She took a deep breath of the cool evening air. The sky continued its beautiful transformation, but peace remained elusive, hovering just beyond reach. Like justice in this house, where wealth determined truth and power dictated reality. Anna clutched the worn photograph between her fingers, tracing the outline of her younger brother Miguel standing proudly behind the wooden counter of their family grocery store in New Orleans. Her mother, Elena Oliveira, beamed beside him, her eyes crinkling with the same determined smile Anna had inherited. The small store represented 3 generations of sacrifice and persistence, a legacy built 1 penny at a time. The evening Montana breeze filtered through the window of her modest quarters in John Smith's mansion, carrying the scent of Jerome's carefully tended roses. Anna placed the photograph on her nightstand, next to the small stack of bills she'd been saving to send home. $3,000, the sum of her careful budgeting and overtime hours, nowhere near enough to save the store from foreclosure. "How?" she whispered to the empty room. "How do you hold your head high when the world expects you to fail?" The question hung in the air, heavier than the accusations that had followed her through the halls all week. The bruise on her wrist had deepened to a mottled purple, a physical reminder of John's grip and his immediate assumption of her guilt. Anna moved to the small bathroom, unwrapping the bandage with careful fingers. The injury wasn't severe, but it marked her not just physically but as someone deemed untrustworthy simply because of who she was. She applied fresh ointment, rewrapped her wrist, remembering her grandmother's words, "Your name is the only thing no one can take from you without permission." Back in her room, Anna opened her journal, a simple leather-bound book where she recorded thoughts too private to share. Her mother had given it to her before she left for Montana, insisting that even when far from home, Anna should never lose her voice. "My dignity is my inheritance," she wrote, the pen pressing firmly against the paper. "No one can steal it, not even the powerful." The words flowed from somewhere deep inside her, a wellspring of resilience that had carried her family through generations of struggle. She closed the journal and returned to the window. The estate sprawled before her, its manicured lawns and stone walls representing a world built on assumptions about power, about worth, about who deserves trust. Tomorrow she would return to those halls, dust those shelves, and face those cameras with her head held high, not because she expected justice, but because she refused to surrender the one thing that was truly hers, her integrity. Ana Oliveira might not control the mansion or its vault, but she owned her truth, and that, she decided as she turned out the light, was a wealth no accusation could diminish. The mansion felt different that morning. Ana could sense it as she moved through the east corridor with her cleaning cart. The air seemed charged with something beyond the usual Montana morning stillness, a watchfulness that made her skin prickle. It wasn't just John Smith's omnipresent cameras tracking her movements. It was the sidelong glances from other staff members, the hushed conversations that stopped when she entered rooms. Ana caught Melissa from the kitchen whispering to the new groundskeeper, both of them falling silent when they noticed her. Their eyes held something between pity and suspicion. Word had clearly spread about the incident at the vault, and everyone seemed to be waiting for her inevitable dismissal. Maria Santos moved through the mansion with unusual agitation, her heels striking the marble floors with sharp staccato clicks. The estate manager barely acknowledged Ana, but her nervous energy was unmistakable. Twice, Ana noticed Maria checking her phone with furrowed brows, tucking it away quickly when anyone approached. "You missed a spot," Maria said coldly as she passed Ana in the hallway, though the floor gleamed perfectly. The comment wasn't about cleanliness, it was about power. At precisely 10 o'clock, Ana's phone buzzed with a message from Jerome. "Boss wants you in study." Now, her stomach tightened, but she kept her expression neutral as she put away her cleaning supplies and straightened her uniform. Whatever was coming, she would face it with dignity. The study door stood partially open when she arrived. John was silhouetted against the window, Montana's rolling landscape spread behind him like a painting. He didn't turn when she entered, just continued staring outward, a manila folder clutched in his right hand. "You wanted to see me, Miss Smith?" Ana kept her voice steady. When he finally turned, his face was unreadable. He tapped the folder against his palm twice before speaking. "You've been here 23 days, he said, voice clipped and precise. "Why does it feel like you're hiding something?" The accusation hung in the air between them. Ana felt a familiar weight settle on her shoulders, the burden of being perpetually suspect, of having her honesty questioned, simply because of who she was and where she came from. She thought of her family's grocery store in New Orleans, of her mother's desperate texts, of all the reasons she needed this job. But she wouldn't beg, she wouldn't explain. Instead, she met his gaze directly. "Maybe you're just used to being lied to," she answered softly. Something flickered across John's face, surprise perhaps, or recognition. For a moment the power dynamic between them shifted, imperceptibly but undeniably. John Smith slid the non-disclosure agreement across his mahogany desk, his fingers lingering on the edge of the paper as if reluctant to let it go. The document was thick, legal jargon designed to intimidate, with the final page prominently marked Integrity Assurance Clause in bold red letters. "Read it carefully," he instructed, watching Ana Oliveira's face for any sign of discomfort. "This grants me full access to monitor your communications while you're on estate property. Any breach results as immediate termination without severance." Ana picked up the document, her hands steady despite the bruise still visible beneath her bandage. She scanned each page methodically, her expression revealing nothing as she absorbed the invasive terms. The clause essentially stripped away any privacy she might have had within the mansion walls. "You understand what you're signing?" John asked, leaning forward in his leather chair. "This isn't standard for household staff." "I understand perfectly," Ana replied, her voice quiet but firm. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as she reached for the pen. Without hesitation, she signed her name on every flagged section, the scratch of the pen against paper the only sound in the cavernous study. She slid the document back across the polished surface. "I have nothing to hide." The estate owner studied her for a long moment, genuinely unsettled by her quiet confidence. Most people would have shown nervousness, indignation, or at least questioned such invasive terms. Ana showed none of these reactions, just a calm certainty that unnerved him more than any protest could have. "You know," he said, his voice softer than before, "that safe had over $20,000 in it." He paused, watching her carefully. The red folder contained account numbers worth millions. You could have taken the money and disappeared. No one would have found you. Ana met his gaze directly, her brown eyes clear and unflinching. But I didn't. Those three simple words hung in the air between them, heavier than any accusation. For the first time, John felt a flicker of doubt about his assumptions. Not just about Anna, but about the walls of suspicion he'd built around himself over the years. Why not, he asked, genuinely curious. Now Anna stood up straight, smoothing her uniform. Because dignity isn't something you can buy back once you've sold it, Mr. Smith. She paused at the doorway. Will that be all? John nodded, suddenly unable to meet her eye. As the door closed behind her, he was left alone with the signed agreement and the uncomfortable weight of his own prejudice. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight as John Smith sat alone in his surveillance room, bathed in the blue glow of monitors. He wasn't watching the vault footage anymore. Instead, his eyes were fixed on a different screen, Anna returning to her modest quarters in the East Wing. The housekeeper moved with the careful exhaustion of someone carrying an invisible weight. She closed her door, shoulders dropping as soon as she was alone. John leaned forward, watching as Anna took a framed photograph from her nightstand. She clutched it to her chest, eyes closed, lips moving in what might have been a prayer or a promise. There was no furtive counting of stolen cash, no guilty glances, only a woman drawing strength from a memory. The estate owner recognized the photo from her personnel file. Anna with her mother and younger brother outside their small grocery store in New Orleans. Damn it, John muttered, reaching for the crystal tumbler on his desk. He poured 3 fingers of bourbon, the amber liquid catching the light as he contemplated what he was seeing. The surveillance system had been installed to catch thieves, not to witness private moments of courage. He took a long swallow, the alcohol burning a path down his throat that matched the uncomfortable sensation spreading through his chest. What if he had been wrong? The possibility gnawed at him. John had built his fortune on being right, on anticipating betrayal before it happened. Being wrong about Anna would mean questioning everything he believed about trust and human nature. Meanwhile, in her room, Anna opened her worn leather journal. The pages were filled with her neat handwriting, observations, hopes, and the quiet affirmations that had carried her through difficult days. She uncapped her pen and wrote deliberately, "Power is knowing you're wrong and choosing truth over pride." The words stared back at her, both challenge and comfort. She traced them with her fingertip before closing the journal and sliding it beneath her pillow. Tomorrow would bring more sideways glances from the staff, more careful scrutiny from Maria Santos, who seemed oddly invested in Anna's troubles with their employer. Anna rose from her bed and carefully folded her apron for the next day, smoothing the wrinkles with practiced hands. She laid out her uniform, each piece precisely arranged, a small ritual of control in a situation where she had so little. The housekeeper moved to the window, looking out at the Montana night sky scattered with stars. Whatever came tomorrow, she would face it with dignity and tact, not because it would be easy, but because it was the only way she knew how to live. The morning sun filtered through the Montana pines as Anna Oliveira finished polishing the antique grandfather clock in the main hall. Her routine, normally predictable to the minute, was suddenly interrupted when John Smith appeared at the doorway, an unusual tension in his posture. "I need you to deliver these to my attorney in town," he said, extending a thick manila envelope sealed with his personal crest, an eagle with outstretched wings. "Usually Maria handles this, but she's unavailable." Anna nodded, noting how his eyes darted away when mentioning Maria Santos. This was the first time she'd been trusted with anything beyond the mansion walls. "Of course, Mr. Smith. I'll leave right away." He handed her the keys to the estate's sedan, a modest vehicle compared to his collection of luxury automobiles. "The address is programmed in the GPS," returned directly afterward. The drive into Helena took 20 minutes, the mountains standing sentinel in her rearview mirror. Anna clutched the envelope on her lap, feeling its weight, literal and figurative. At the law office, a glass-fronted building nestled between a cafe and bookstore, she was greeted by a receptionist who seemed surprised to see her instead of Maria. "Mr. Donovan is expecting these," Anna explained, handing over the envelope. As the receptionist placed it on her desk, the flap shifted slightly, revealing the bold heading on the top document, "Transfer of Assets," with Maria's name clearly typed beneath it. Anna's breath caught, but she maintained her composure, thanking the receptionist before departing. Back in the vehicle, her mind raced faster than the car engine. The missing money from the safe, Maria's nervous behavior, the late-night phone calls she'd overheard, pieces of a puzzle were falling into place. This wasn't about testing a housekeeper's honesty. Something far more significant was unfolding. Anna gripped the steering wheel tighter, remembering Maria's smug warnings and thinly veiled threats. The estate manager had been positioning herself, perhaps for months, while deliberately casting suspicion on others. The Montana landscape blurred as she drove, her thoughts crystallizing into clarity. John hadn't just been testing her, he'd been testing everyone, and while she had maintained her integrity despite desperate circumstances, it seemed Maria had failed spectacularly. By the time the mansion came back into view, Anna had made a decision. This wasn't just about clearing her name anymore. The dignity she'd fought so hard to protect now demanded something more: truth. Her family's grocery store in New Orleans might be struggling, but she wouldn't compromise her principles, not even in the face of injustice. She parked the car and returned the keys to John, who studied her face carefully. "Everything all right?" he asked. "Yes," Anna replied simply, though they both knew nothing was all right in this house of secrets. The real test, she realized, was only beginning. The Montana sunset cast long shadows across the estate as Anna made her way to the greenhouse. Jerome Costa was tending to his prized orchids, his weathered hands moving with surprising gentleness among the delicate blooms. She had always found the gardener's presence reassuring. Unlike the rest of the staff, he looked her in the eyes when they spoke. "I need to talk to you," Anna said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something's not right here." Jerome nodded, setting down his pruning shears. "I've been watching too. This isn't just about you or some missing money." Anna described her trip to the law office and the document she'd glimpsed. Jerome's expression darkened as he listened. "Maria's been sneaking out almost every night this week," he revealed, wiping soil from his hands. "Always after midnight, always with a folder. I thought maybe she had a relationship she was hiding, but now, what about the accountant?" Anna asked. "Robert, he's been making trips to town 3 times a week. Always returns looking nervous." Jerome leaned closer. "Last Tuesday, I overheard him arguing with Maria behind the garage. Something about signatures and timelines." Anna felt a chill despite the greenhouse warmth. The pieces were fitting together. Maria's nervousness, her warning to Anna, the document transfer. "They're stealing from him," she whispered, "using the vault incident as a distraction." Jerome nodded slowly. "John's so busy watching you, he's missing what's happening right under his nose." He looked at her with newfound respect. "Maybe you weren't the only one being tested. Maybe you're just the only one who passed." The words settled on Anna's shoulders like a weight. She thought of her family's struggling store in New Orleans, of her mother's desperate messages. How easy it would have been to take what wasn't hers, but that wasn't who she was, wasn't who her parents had raised her to be. "What are you going to do?" Jerome asked. Anna straightened her shoulders. "I'm going to find proof. Real proof." "That's dangerous," the gardener warned. "Maria has power here, and allies." "So do I now," Anna replied, meeting his gaze. As she walked back to the main house, Anna's resolve hardened with each step. She was no longer just fighting for her own name. She was uncovering rot beneath the estate's polished surface. The real test, she realized, was only beginning. In her pocket, her phone vibrated with another message from her mother. Whatever came next, Anna knew she couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when the truth was finally coming to light. Anna spent the morning after her conversation with Jerome Costa meticulously cleaning the West Wing, her mind racing with possibilities. The gardener had promised to look for evidence, and she prayed he would find something concrete. Her family's grocery store in New Orleans weighed heavily on her thoughts. They needed her help, but not at the cost of her integrity. Just before noon, Jerome appeared at the laundry room doorway, his weathered face tight with urgency. "I found something," he whispered, glancing over his shoulder. Maria left her car unlocked while meeting with the accountant. Inside a hidden compartment beneath the passenger seat, Jerome had discovered a burner phone and a manila envelope containing forged documents, property deeds for 3 estates in Montana, all bearing John Smith's signature. The signatures looked genuine at first glance, but Jerome, who had worked at the estate for 7 years, noticed subtle differences. "Look at these dates," Anna said, pointing to the transfer papers. "They're scheduled for tomorrow afternoon." Her heart raced as she examined the documents more carefully. "Maria's not just being handed the estate, she's taking everything," Jerome whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the washing machine. Anna scrolled through the burner phone's text messages, finding conversations with offshore accounts and references to the old man and cleaning house once the transfer was complete. The estate manager had orchestrated an elaborate scheme, likely planning to dismiss the entire staff once she gained control. She's been planning this for months, Anna realized, her fingers trembling as she replaced everything exactly as they'd found it. The missing money from the vault was just the beginning, a test run maybe, or a distraction. Time was running out. If these documents were executed tomorrow, John would lose everything and Anna and the other staff members would lose their livelihoods. Despite the risk to her already precarious position, Anna knew what she had to do. She found the wealthy estate owner in his study, reviewing financial statements. Without preamble, she closed the door behind her. "Maria is stealing from you," Anna said flatly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "She's transferring assets using forged documents. Tomorrow, it's over if you don't act." John looked up sharply, his expression hardening. "That's a serious accusation against my most trusted employee." "I know," Anna replied, standing her ground, "but I have evidence. And unlike what you thought about me, this isn't about money. It's about what's right." The mansion fell silent as they stared at each other, the power dynamic between them shifting in ways neither could have anticipated when Anna first arrived 23 days ago. John recoiled from Anna's revelation, his face a battlefield between disbelief and the growing suspicion he'd harbored for weeks. The estate owner ran his hand through his silver hair, struggling with the possibility that he'd been focusing on the wrong person all along. "Show me everything," he demanded, his voice quieter than Anna had ever heard it. Anna Oliveira laid out the evidence she and Jerome had gathered. John's fingers flew across his keyboard, pulling up security footage from 3 days prior. The screen revealed Maria Santos alone in his study after hours, methodically copying keys and photographing confidential files with her smartphone. "You knew about this?" Anna asked, watching his face carefully. John nodded, the admission clearly difficult for him. "I suspected something wasn't right. The missing money, documents rearranged, but I had no proof until now." His eyes met hers with reluctant respect. "I was looking in the wrong direction." The footage continued, showing Maria accessing his private computer, downloading files onto a flash drive. John's jaw tightened as he watched his trusted manager betraying him so methodically. "She's been with me for 7 years, he said, his voice hollow. "I gave her everything." Anna stood quietly, understanding the pain of broken trust. Sometimes the people closest to us hide the most. After reviewing all the evidence, they formulated a plan. John would pretend ignorance while they gathered final proof of Maria's scheme. The estate manager had scheduled the final asset transfer for tomorrow afternoon. They needed to act before then. "Meet me here at 9 tomorrow morning," John instructed, his businessman's composure returning. "Bring Jerome. We finish this." Anna nodded, relieved yet anxious about what was to come. As she turned to leave, John called after her, "Anna, I owe you an apology." The words seemed to cost him physically. "I made assumptions based on." He paused, uncomfortable with naming his prejudice. "I know what they were based on," she replied simply. "What matters is what we do now." That night, Anna lay awake in her quarters, staring at the ceiling. The moonlight filtered through thin curtains, casting shadows that seemed to dance with possibility. Tomorrow would change everything for her family struggling with their store in New Orleans, for the entire estate. She touched the bandage on her wrist, remembering John's grip when he'd first accused her. The bruise beneath was healing, but some wounds ran deeper. Still, there was something powerful in standing in her truth, in refusing to be what others expected. Anna closed her eyes, mentally preparing for the confrontation ahead. Whatever happened tomorrow, she would face it with the same quiet dignity that had carried her through every test before. Saturday dawned with an eerie stillness over the Montana estate. The morning light filtered through the study's grand windows, casting long shadows across the polished oak desk where John Smith had meticulously arranged the evidence. The burner phone forged property deeds and photographs of confidential documents. Ana Oliveira stood beside Jerome Costa, both of them silent as they waited. Her hands were steady now, the bruise on her wrist fading to yellow, a reminder of how much had changed in such a short time. The gardener shifted his weight from one foot to another, his weathered face tense with anticipation. "She'll be here in 5 minutes," John said, checking his watch. The estate owner had aged visibly over the past week, the lines around his eyes deeper, his posture less commanding. "Are you both ready?"
Ana nodded. This confrontation wasn't about vindication. It was about truth. At precisely 9 o'clock, Maria Santos strode into the study, her heels clicking confidently against the hardwood floor. She carried a leather portfolio and wore a triumphant smile, the look of someone about to receive everything she'd schemed for. "Good morning," she said brightly, then faltered when she noticed Jerome and Ana. "I wasn't aware this would be a group meeting." John gestured to a chair. "Please, sit down. We have much to discuss about the future of this estate." Maria's smile widened as she took her seat, but it froze when John slid the burner phone across the desk toward her. "Would you care to explain this?" he asked quietly. The estate manager's composure wavered for just a moment. "I've never seen that device before." John pressed a button on his laptop, and Maria's voice filled the room. "Once the transfer is complete, we'll liquidate the Montana property. Smith won't know what hit him until it's too late." The color drained from Maria's face. She glanced at Ana, hatred flashing in her eyes. "You set me up." "No," Ana replied evenly. "You did that yourself." For the next 20 minutes, John methodically presented each piece of evidence. The forged signatures, the secret bank accounts, the planned asset transfers. Maria's denials grew increasingly desperate, until finally, confronted with the surveillance footage of her photographing John's private documents, she fell silent. "You're fired," John said simply. "The authorities have been notified about the attempted fraud. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings." Within the hour, Maria was escorted from the property, her elaborate scheme dismantled. As her car disappeared down the long driveway, Ana felt no triumph, only relief that the truth had finally emerged from the shadows. John turned to Ana and Jerome, his expression somber but grateful. "You saved this estate," he acknowledged, "and perhaps something more important." The three stood in silence, watching as the morning sun fully illuminated the grounds, the estate preserved but fundamentally changed by what had transpired within its walls. A profound silence settled over the Montana estate in the days following Maria Santos's departure. The mansion, once tense with suspicion and whispered accusations, now breathed with a different rhythm. Sunlight streamed through windows that had seemed perpetually shadowed, illuminating corners where secrets once lurked. Ana Oliveira moved through her familiar routines with renewed purpose. Each room she cleaned, each surface she polished now represented something beyond mere duty. It was an act of restoration. She wasn't just maintaining order, she was rebuilding the foundation of trust that had crumbled beneath their feet. "The air feels different," Jerome Costa remarked one morning as they crossed paths near the garden entrance. The gardener's weathered face broke into a rare smile. "Like we can finally breathe," Ana nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. For the first time since she'd arrived at the estate, she walked the halls without feeling the weight of suspicion pressing down on her shoulders. 3 days after the confrontation, John Smith's voice came through the intercom, requesting her presence in his study. As Ana climbed the grand staircase, she noticed her reflection in the polished banister, standing taller, her eyes clear and unafraid. The study door stood ajar. John sat behind his mahogany desk, the surveillance monitors behind him now dark. Gone was the perpetual suspicion that had hardened his features for so long. Instead, he looked almost vulnerable, the lines around his eyes softened by something resembling humility. "You could have left," he said as she entered. "After how I treated you, most would have." Ana remained standing, her hands folded before her. "I had nothing to run from." John gestured to the chair across from him, an invitation rather than a command. "You saved me from my own blindness," he admitted, the words clearly difficult for him. "I was so convinced that trust was weakness that I couldn't see the truth right in front of me." "Sometimes we see what we expect to see," Ana replied, taking the seat. Her voice carried no bitterness,
only quiet certainty. Sometimes justice isn't a courtroom. It's telling the truth when no one wants to hear it. For the first time since she'd known him, John smiled, not the tight, controlled expression of superiority she'd glimpsed before, but something genuine that transformed his entire face. It was the smile of respect, of seeing someone clearly for perhaps the first time. "I've never been good at apologies," he said, his fingers tapping nervously on the desk. "Then don't apologize," Anna answered. "Just be better." The wealthy estate owner nodded, understanding the simple wisdom in her words. Outside the window, the Montana sky stretched endlessly blue, promising something neither had dared hope for until now, a new beginning. Weeks passed, and the estate transformed under Ana Oliveira's steady guidance. John Smith had officially appointed her as estate director, a position that came with its own office, the very room where Maria had once plotted her schemes. Ana accepted the role with quiet determination, knowing it represented more than just a promotion. It was an acknowledgement of her worth. Her first order of business was implementing a transparency protocol. Every staff member now had access to anonymous feedback channels, and weekly meetings became a forum where concerns could be voiced without fear of retribution. The mansion's atmosphere lightened as the invisible weight of secrecy lifted from its halls. "Trust isn't given blindly," Anna explained during one staff gathering. "It's built through systems that protect everyone." The gardener nodded in agreement, Jerome's weathered face breaking into a rare smile as he witnessed the changes taking root. John found himself adapting to this new reality. The man who once monitored every movement through surveillance cameras now preferred face-to-face conversation. He'd walk the grounds with Anna each morning, discussing estate matters while absorbing the Montana sunrise. "I never realized how exhausting suspicion could be," he confessed one day. "It's like I've been holding my breath for years." Anna understood. Her journal entries shifted from defiance to reflection as she documented this evolution. The bruise on her wrist had long faded, but its lesson remained: dignity preserved becomes dignity multiplied. When she proposed establishing scholarships for young women of color, John didn't hesitate. "The Smith Foundation Opportunity Fund," he named it, allocating $2 million as initial funding. Anna thought of her mother and brother working in their New Orleans store. How different her path might have been with such support. The first recipients were selected that spring, 5 young women, whose determination reminded Anna of herself. During the award ceremony, she stood tall in a tailored suit rather than a housekeeper's uniform, addressing the audience with the confidence of someone who knew her true value. For John, watching Anna speak was a powerful reminder of how close he'd come to losing an invaluable ally through his own prejudice. The mansion that had once been his fortress now served a greater purpose. Under Anna's leadership, the estate no longer cast long shadows across its grounds. It radiated light, becoming a place where dignity and truth finally had a home. The Montana spring painted the estate with vibrant colors as Ana Oliveira stood at the entrance, welcoming each guest with a warm handshake and genuine smile. The grand reunion brought together former staff members who had once walked these halls with uncertainty, now returning with curiosity and cautious optimism. Some had left under Maria's harsh management, others had simply moved on, but all carried stories of the mansion's complicated past. "Welcome back," Anna said to a former kitchen assistant who had been dismissed years ago. "This place has missed your laughter." The woman's eyes widened in surprise. Being remembered, being valued, was something new in this house. John Smith observed from a distance, his posture more relaxed than anyone had ever seen. The estate owner had transformed alongside his property, learning that true security came not from suspicion but from trust. He approached Jerome, who was showing guests the newly established community garden, where staff could grow their own produce. "Your vision for this place was right all along," John admitted to the gardener. Jerome simply nodded, his quiet wisdom having been vindicated by time. Inside the main hall, photographs lined the walls, not just of the Smith family, but of every person who had contributed to the estate's history. The mansion, once a fortress designed to keep people out, now opened itself like a book, telling stories of those who had shaped it. Anna took her place at the center of the gathering, her voice steady as she addressed the crowd. "The Smith Foundation begins a new chapter today," she announced. "We're establishing scholarships for young women of color, pursuing careers in business and property management." The crowd applauded as John handed her the official documents. This house belonged to its secrets for too long. Anna continued, her gaze sweeping across faces both familiar and new. Now it belongs to its people, to all of you who built it, maintained it, and believed in what it could become. Among the guests, Anna spotted her mother and brother, who had traveled from New Orleans for the occasion. Their family store had been saved not by theft, but by honest partnership. John had invested in their business after learning their story. As the evening progressed, laughter echoed through rooms that had once held only whispers and suspicion. The surveillance cameras remained, but now served to document memories rather than monitor for betrayal. The vault door stood permanently open, transformed into a display case for the Foundation's mission statement: truth, dignity, hope. When the applause finally faded, Anna found herself standing beside John on the back porch, watching the Montana sunset paint the sky in gold and purple. "You changed everything," he said simply. Anna smiled. "No, we chose to change together."